Ask Reddit, what's the strangest punishment your parents ever gave you? Part 2. Wasn't allowed to go trick-or-treating that year because I didn't lie to my babysitter about not having eaten breakfast that day. Couldn't pass this comment without saying how shameful that is. Kids should never be made to cover up the failings of fully grown adults. Sorry you had to go through this. Give me my dessert on top of the vegetables I didn't want to finish. The next time I made sure to finish my plate. Odd, perhaps, but it worked. My mom would just make me eat them for breakfast the next morning if I didn't finish my vegetables. That was the worst. I was super picky as a kid, so I actually found mustard made it a lot more bearable. A lot of mustard. It didn't matter what it was, it got slathered in mustard. I've probably eaten more mustard than any other human being. They were mad I was playing too many video games. Civilization, Master of Orion 2, World of Warcraft 1, Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, Tactics, Ogre Battle, You Are Quan Masters. Okay, so I played a lot of games. So they made me go out with my friends more. Now, keep in mind I did have friends and was social and would go out once or twice a week with them, but any video games were bad. So my parents forced me to go hang out in my buddy's garage where they just drank and smoked up at 13 years old. A couple of them ended up getting into some serious drugs around 16. And my parents still were forcing me to go hang out with them because their parents were good people that will sort him out. Well, they never did. I always thought it was funny that they considered cerebral strategy games more damaging to my development than hanging out with 13 to 16-year-old drunks. That is freaking stupid. I actually give credit to video games for me not getting into so much trouble as a teenager. My old friends from elementary school weren't as into video games as I was, so by middle and high school, we had drifted apart. They got in trouble with cops on a regular basis. World of Warcraft, which was mainly what I played at the time, only kept me from sometimes not getting my homework done. When I was 6, I did something stupid that angered my dad, and I wasn't allowed to mention anything related to Pokemon for a month. Creative. Gave them a break, but didn't restrict you too much. Sent me to their room. My room had a full-size color TV with cable, video games, and all my stuff. Their room had a bed and a tiny black and white TV with an antenna that only got one channel in as well. Most boring night ever. My mum turned off the electricity instead of turning off the Wi-Fi when I was playing too much MC. I'm terrified of the dark, and I was really scared that some monster was in the house. I screamed so loud we got noise complaints from both neighbors. This happened to me, except it wasn't my fault. So when I was about 10, I lived in LA with my dad and his girlfriend. Thing is, my dad had, and still has, a weed business in way North Cali, so about a 9-hour drive. So about 5 months of every year, he was up there. Well, turns out my dad's girlfriend was cheating. Surprise, surprise! No thing, Dad, you aren't there half the time and left her to take care of your kids. My dad still stayed up there during the breakup, while she was taking care of us very half-ass and was rarely home. After a month or two, she eventually only showed up to cook microwave meals and would leave right after that. It got so bad where sometimes she wouldn't show up for the day. Eventually she turned off the power. No reason, the bills were paid, she manually turned it off. So we were without supervision, power, and someone to cook for us. I was the oldest, so I eventually had to start cooking for everyone. But yeah, we had no power for a while. At that point, I called my grandma who lived 3 hours away. We ended up living with her for a few months. When I was 5, my dad had this threat he would always use that went like, putting us under the stream or something. I can't put it right in English words. I didn't understand what that meant until one night I just couldn't fall asleep. So I was there, lying in bed, and when he came to check up on us, I shared a room with my 2 sisters, and saw me awake, he decided it was my fault and he had to punish me. So he dragged me to the bathroom and put my head under the running cold water tap until my hair was soaked and sent me to bed like that. A while later, when he had presumably fallen asleep, my mom came, having heard the entire thing happen because I was obviously shouting at him to stop, and dried my hair, cursing him up and down. To this day, I still don't understand what his logic was, and he laughs about it when I mention it. He always had it out for me during those years for some reason, and if you're wondering why my mom didn't stop him, my guess would be during that time, housewives just didn't really go against their husbands for whatever reason. I don't hold it against her though. Made me eat biscuits and gravy. I absolutely hated that food as a kid. My obese stepfather hated it, so often the punishment was having those for dinner. I often just didn't eat, which was fine by him. He got my portion. Oof, I was also punished with being served foods I didn't like. It was head cheese for my family. I was the only one who couldn't stomach it. Difference being that my parents made me finish, and if I vomited, they beat me for wasting food. And this isn't some story from the old ages. This happened 20 years ago in a Western first world country. My dad made me take apart a Super Cub aircraft engine and put it back together. My dad then got in the plane and flew to Boston. This was after I mashed up badly. He wanted to make a point that my actions had consequences, and that if I did something like that again, someone I loved could die. Dad didn't check the engine before he flew out. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "I trust you. Every time you have to do something like this, my life is in your hands. Your mother and I trust you. Put the faith we have in you to work. You aren't a stupid kid. Act like it." That moment so terrified me for a second, but I knew I'd done the job right. Not really a punishment, more of a life lesson, my dad's style. Out of the hundreds of comments I've read, this is hands down the most profoundly interesting response. It should be all the way at the top to be lamented on by the masses. Your dad sounds like an amazing dude, and I hope the lessons he has imparted on you have not been overlooked. When I was ages 6 to 10, a typical punishment consisted of being made to wear a diaper and then treated like a baby for the rest of the day. Several times I was sent to school wearing the diaper, and if anyone came over while this punishment was going on, I had to show them what I was wearing underneath my pants. My apologies for your parents' form of punishment. This doesn't work, and it is shame-based. I hope you have recovered. Was 14 years old. First time getting wasted. Like, really wasted. Had a half-a-liter bottle of 80% alcohol. No memory of that night. Apparently 2 of my friends had carried me home and talked to my father, who had only asked whether I had anything besides alcohol. Next morning, my parents made me breakfast in bed. No penalty. Just a weirdly nice conversation about what went wrong. At the end, my father just said, "I'm not going to tell you not to drink. I know that doesn't work. All I want you to do is make better decisions in life than I did," and left the room. Later that day we went shopping and they bought me a new snowboard. Weird. Seems like they tried reverse psychology to make you feel bad. My parents had an advertisement agency. They would also do pre-print work. I don't know the English term for it, but they would do photo editing and magazine editing, yearbooks for high schools and such. I was in 5th grade. I found out that they were doing the color and photo editing for a Turkish porno magazine called Chiquita, and took it to school and monetized it. NBA collector cards, countless chocolate bars, Magic the Gathering cards, soccer cards were my main currency. I was the king amongst men. Then a CUNT tried to get his cards back and threatened me to tell the headmaster. I tore one of his cards and said, "If you tell them, I will mess the others too." He told me they didn't see my bluff. I cut the cards just in spite. My punishment was to start working for my parents' company after school for 2 hours every day. I learned Photoshop, Corel, scanning old school photo films, learning the printing machine and such. I got good, so they made me work until 7th grade, until they divorced and sold the company. Their divorce was the best thing that happened. Honestly, it sounds like you learned some valuable skills. We had 4 cats, mostly because I wanted them. But I often would forget to clean their litter boxes because it grossed me out. Especially when one of the cats wasn't feeling well, I couldn't stand the stench. So I often just kept putting it off until someone else did. After my mom got tired of this, I came home from high school one day to find all of the litter boxes moved into my bedroom. I was told they would stay there for a week. I was not allowed to open windows or to sleep anywhere besides my bedroom. She also replaced the litter we were using to a brand with no odor reduction. It doesn't sound like much, but OMG, it was horrible. I would have much rather been spanked. Did you scoop them during the week or just leave them? My dad sent me to my room. No biggie, right? Well, that's until you hear why. Reason? I did my stupid homework. He claims I was in his way and needed to get out for some exercise, but it was already overdue, so I couldn't. Although I think the only reason he acted this way is because of his mood swings that he gets from his PTSD. I love him, but his mental issues are a nightmare when in action. Hey, I get it. My stepdad has PTSD. He never hit me or my sisters, but the screaming was enough to cause some long-term damage. I get anxious when people change their facial expressions or their tones. I'm afraid of confrontation or upsetting anyone. I'm constantly apologizing, and any small argument puts me into a depressive spiral. A lot of thoughts such as, what did I do wrong? I deserve this. I'm a bad person, and so on and so forth. I love him, but my sisters have been coming to me more increasingly with how things have been getting worse at home. It's really frustrating that my first response when someone mentions something in passing is, I'm sorry. Example, hey, could you move over for a second? I'm sorry. Doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's constant. I'm getting a lot better, and I'm doing my best to become more confident in myself as well. I had to write 500,000 sentences once. I got about a third of the way done, and my dad noticed I was writing one word at a time down the list, because in my mind that was faster, and he made me start over. The funny part is I can't remember what the sentence was or why I had to write them in the first place. I had to do that too, but it was counted by the page. I discovered that if you taped 3 or 4 pens together and were really careful, it only took half the time. I had to do this for years, and they gave me like 20 or 30 pages at a time. There were several times I spent entire days just writing the same sentence over and over. Just so everyone knows this doesn't work as a punishment, so don't ever make your kids go through it.